In Japan, there's a system that takes young boys and girls that have no special talents at all and turns them into national superstars.
AKB48 チーム A 前田敦子
応援してくださった皆さん、皆さんに感謝しています。ありがとうございました。
These performers are supposed to be singers and dancers, but they can't do those things too well. In fact, most of them are teenagers that treat their performances like an after-school activity, which in many cases, it actually is. And it's not that they don't care about giving a good show, but most people aren't there for singing and dancing. What people want from them is the fantasy of having a personal relationship. They want to feel like they know the performer as a friend, or as a family member, or maybe as a lover. For that to feel real, or at least possible, the performer can't be too talented or too good looking. They have to be someone you could find anywhere, someone that struggles, just like everyone else. And they have to be someone that can be molded to fit their desires. So to keep the fans happy and their fantasy intact, these boys and girls have to follow certain rules. For girls especially, that means that intimate relationships with men are forbidden. If they get caught breaking that rule, they will be disciplined. But sometimes, well, we'll talk about that later. First, we need to go over the millionaire business that makes this system possible. Otherwise, what I've shown you so far, and what I'm about to show you, won't make too much sense. The performers I've been talking about, they're called idols. And they weren't always like this.
皆様、明けましておめでとうございます。1972年が今始まりました。お風に。
In the late 1950s, Japan saw a huge economic boom, and with that came an also huge adoption of television. Having a TV as a centerpiece encouraged families to gather and watch it together. So to satisfy that new demand, management agencies and broadcasters worked together to create the concept of an idol. The idea was pretty simple. We need someone that can entertain the kids and their parents at the same time. So they need to do a little bit of everything. They need to sing, dance, they need to be funny, and they need to be just pleasant to be around. Their purpose is so people can have a nice afternoon with their families. So as long as they keep watching them, the idols don't have to be great at anything. And the most popular male idols at the time were marketed on that exact premise. The fact that they weren't fully developed as artists was supposed to give them a certain charm, a certain boyishness. That's what made them different from other kinds of entertainers. Idols represented ideal youth, so they had to be infantilized. And at the time, there wasn't a better example of that than Onyanko Club.
今日も5時、にゃんにゃんタイムになりました。3月最後の水曜日、もちろん生本番です。おにゃんこ今日も元気です。週の真ん中水曜日。
真ん中もっこり夕焼け
Onyanko Club as an idol group was very different from those that came before it. They were created by a TV network to see how aggressive they could get with new marketing strategies. First of all, they wanted to know, is it worth it to target a male audience only? Second, could they get away with having a group where the girls actually have no skills? And third, could they implement a system that would guarantee them the biggest amount of fans for the least amount of investment? The answer to all of that was a resounding yes. The members for Onyanko Club were sourced from the audience of a midnight program called All Night Fuji, based entirely on how entertaining they seemed. They also had to be students of some kind, most of them being high schoolers and some of them being in early college. And that part was really important because they wanted authenticity. The whole theme around them was of an after-school club, uniforms and all. So when a girl decided to end her activities with the group, they would receive a big send-off concert called a graduation. Not only did that name was on brand for them, it was also symbolic. A girl didn't just leave the group, she was signaling to everyone that she had outgrown it, and she was ready to continue her life or her career as an adult. And after she left, a new, younger girl would take her place. That was known as the graduation system, and it would ensure a constant flow of new fans. All that's left to explain in this experiment in sales is the actual songs. The girls weren't singers, so they couldn't sing in tune, and they almost always sang together in chorus to hide that fact a little bit. What was prominent though were the lyrics, especially their debut song titled "Don't Make Me Take Off My Sailor Uniform," which were explicit. Needless to say, they were a huge success, and they gave the producers a lot of useful information to repeat that success. And they would need to repeat it. Only 2.5 years after debut, Onyanko Club was no more. But they became the blueprint on how a female idol group looks like. The 80s are considered by many the golden age for idols. It was also the last time they were truly mainstream. By the 90s, people are fatigued with the idol system. Maybe it was oversaturation, or maybe it was a crashing economy, but the truth is, demand isn't what it used to be. Now, what's popular are rock bands and singer-songwriters that have a more Western sound to them. Idols are now seen as inferior performers, and new artists actively avoid that label. This didn't mean idols stopped existing, but they had to adapt to most of their casual fanbase being gone. So they had to appeal to the fans that stayed, the hardcore, the truly devoted, the ones known as otaku. That word is used to describe someone that has an unhealthy obsession with a certain topic. Originally, this term was coined to refer to fans of cartoons and animation, known as manga and anime, respectively. It later expanded to include a number of interests, but the one thing that's important here is that the term itself has a very negative connotation. The stereotype of the otaku is someone that's socially withdrawn, is inept at social interactions, and can't hold romantic relationships. Actually, the author that coined the term went a lot farther. He called otaku failed men that read magazines made for girls and were obsessed with cuteness. But strong opinions aside, these are two types of otaku that do have some overlap. First of all, the idol kind shortened the term to ota, sometimes with a silent W in front of it. And second, most of them know that the image the idol is presenting is not real, and that's why they like it. They are willing participants in a pretend game where the idol embodies a pure, innocent girl that needs their help to reach her potential. They can also feel safe having personal feelings for the idol because they have an unspoken agreement where the idol won't have personal relationships with anybody, and therefore she can't hurt them. That's the promise they get. The promise that their feelings will be acknowledged, that if they're having a bad day, the idol can help them feel better. Idols on multiple levels responded to the very real need their fans had to just take their mind off of things and have some fun. In 1997, a brief return to the mainstream happened with an idol group called Morning Musume, which was very clearly inspired by Onyanko Club. But what really solidified the image of the idol as we know it was a group called AKB48, and the mastermind behind it was a man named Yasushi Akimoto, the same writer for Onyanko Club's lyrics 2 decades earlier. It's worth noting that despite his contribution, he wasn't a producer. He didn't have the final say on everything. But he did want to manage a group like that on his own. And with his experience from the Onyanko days, he would devise a strategy for his own production. First, he wouldn't rely on TV. Idols only had careers for as long as they were featured in it, and its influence was already declining. Second, the main focus of the group would be live performance. CD sales going down due to piracy was a rather new development. So to keep the money rolling in, he couldn't rely solely on those. And third, he would target the hardcore ota since the very beginning. Akimoto met all three of those goals with a single move. He managed to get exclusive access to a small theater located in Akihabara, Tokyo, which was known as a gathering point for otaku of all kinds. The name of the group, AKB, comes precisely from this place. The girls were separated into teams that would rotate to keep the performances up almost daily, and within a couple of months, they were completely sold out. AKB were marketed as idols you can meet, and Akimoto really meant that. He gave each fan the chance to meet with their favorite idol face to face, exchange a few words, and shake hands in the appropriately named handshake events. To get into those events, you would need special handshake tickets, which you could get when you bought AKB's CDs. Now, for how long would you be entitled to speak with your idol of choice at one of these events? The answer is 7 to 10 seconds per ticket. Another great innovation coming from the same tactic is that of voting for the so-called general election, which is essentially a popularity contest to choose which girls are gonna go on the next single. Every idol in AKB48 competes against each other for one of the top 16 spots, and like the handshake event, you can use tickets multiple times, so voting isn't democratic. At the peak of their popularity, general elections were held at stadiums and were broadcasted all over the country. These methods for driving sales really involved the fan, but put a lot of pressure on the idol. Keeping up appearances has more of a practical consideration. A controversy, however small, can be pretty risky. That's what was going through the head of an idol called Minami Minegishi back in 2013. She was photographed by paparazzi going out of her boyfriend's apartment. And in doing so, she broke one of the biggest taboos an idol can have, which is to have relationships. That's specifically sometimes called a rule, a dating ban, or no love allowed. And it is unlikely to be written in any contract because that would have some serious legal implications. It's very likely kept vague on purpose. It's something that pretty much everyone knows, but it's not official and it can't be enforced. But if the idols do break the taboo, they deal with them on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it's a temporal suspension. The most common way to deal with these kinds of things is to just take the idol out of the public eye until the situation dies down. But it can also escalate to full-on termination, ending the career of that idol at least on that agency. In the case of Minami, she felt enough guilt for what she had done that she shaved her head completely bald and recorded herself apologizing and crying, pleading to her fans to allow her to stay. Minami said she did it on her own, and the official punishment for her was being demoted to a trainee status, which is a lower rank within AKB. Minami did get a lot of support from her bandmates and from her fans, and was eventually allowed back into the group. But the incident stays as a reminder of the kind of pressure that these young performers can be under.